So we're going to start by talking about decentralized identity.
Yes. Dragon Factor.
Yes.
We have Dragon Factor, right? As a new decentralized identity solution. Maybe Joe, you could tell us a little bit about what Dragon Factor is and the problem that it's solving.
Right. It's something that we've been wanting to build and starting to build for quite a while. We had the back end for over a year now, and I'd say we have never had time to productize it. So basically it's a way, though, to split apart your identity so that you're not storing it all in one place, or at least you have the option to store parts of it in some places and parts of it in other places. And the typical decentralized identity patterns where you control your own points of identity, or in our case we call them factors, right? Multi-factor, but where everything's a factor, anything's a factor, and at any granularity. But we have, at least I think, some unique angles on the structure and the actual model.
Got it. So how do you see decentralized identity being used in day-to-day standpoint?
I treat it like I do the platform itself, the same, at least in my mind, that people will be able to do things that I don't expect with it, right? Because we've even had cases where people have come in and asked us about things that I wouldn't have said, oh, that's a factor, obviously, but the points of data, health data, financial data, things like that, but that anything could be a factor. So I imagine that depending upon the type of adoption, right, and we have two different angles, right, and you probably know more than I do about it even, but the top-down approach, where we want to go to someone that needs to consume identities from their own customers, but then we also want to hit an angle of the people themselves, that is the identities, the identity owners, that we want to incentivize them to provide better identity, to control their identity better, and to ideally build a network marketplace of identity. So
does this how does this relate to things like federated identity, like things like Facebook and Google and those places where you sign in with social login and those types of things? Does that replace it? Is it the same thing? Or how are they different?
But definitely not the same thing. But you could build those components in as factors. So you could use those and you could integrate with those. So if you already have a system that uses Facebook login, that you could plug it in still, but the real point is that we can create a user experience that is as simple as, or even ideally simpler than, login with Facebook or login with Google or Twitter or whatever else, but doesn't put all of your eggs in one basket in Facebook, or Facebook with Libra and all the rest of that stuff going on, that you'd be able to separate yourself and say, I don't want my info there. I want to still be able to do this simple thing, but I want to be able to control where and that includes anonymous IDs. We have solutions cooked in that you could have a market that would limit anonymous IDs, but would still make them possible. So if you want to, because people need anonymous identity.
So maybe you can dive a little bit deeper into what it is an anonymous identity, like anonymous, pseudo-anonymous, and are there other things? Is there digital identity, proven identity, and what are the different types of spectrum of types of identities that can exist?
I think it is a spectrum. You could have pure anon, you could have some level in between, but the point is that you could prove to anyone who is consuming that identity, like say it's a website that's letting you have an anonymous account, that website can know that you've gone through some operation that has something to do with scarcity, where it knows that you aren't very likely to have 1 million of these anonymous accounts, but you have one. And on the other side, that even if the user with that anonymity wants to prove that something really was him or her, they could after the fact. And everything in between. I mean, it kind of depends, and that's why it's flexible, because we don't know precisely how people would want to use it. So we know, like with DIN, like I have specific things that we've thought through to make anti-censorship work with DIN, including anonymous accounts, and still being able to measure whether, like, say, loyalty of this customer, even though I have no way to actually identify.
Interesting. Right. Interesting. Do you see? Is this a replacement to passwords? Is it a password? Is it a replacement to passwords? And what is that? Is it a combo? Like, I'm trying to get my head wrapped around what this is.
Ideally, a replacement to passwords, but with public key crypto, so that it's stronger for one. You have to be careful about the keys, but we think with Factor, once all of the UI comes out, all, whether it's an app, whether it's a web app, that the user experience is clean and simple. We think passes the grandma test for usability, yet is extremely strong. Right, that the key in the end is that Dragon Factor can have on top of it what we call Prove a Human, which is a rollable key system where it's not a wallet, so you don't have tokens held by your keys, but the identity itself is matched to the keys. So if I lose the keys because I don't know there's crypto behind it, I do have a backup, of course, but I also have the ability in a really organic way with other humans to let the system know with some measurable level of risk that it's me and I did lose my phone. And so there's some neat stuff there. But that's a big part of it, that it makes it simpler. And like, say, when you go to a website, you wouldn't have to remember your password. You would just have to have either your device, or if it's you have capability if it's a purchase or some high level security action, that I can have a second factor which is tied to all these other factors that will prove that, oh yes, this really is me, yet it's really simple. So anyway.